I've got too much fucking shit on. I don't even want to be around anymore. It's too fucking hot. God damn it, Nick.
Oh, jeez.
Ah,
Wow. Oh, yeah, it's Joe. I
no.
thought that was Miles Morales.
And welcome back to TLDR. I'm your friendly neighborhood backcracker, Dr. Joe. With me, as always, is my hook and grind. Together, we couldn't put the Woodward and Bernstein more into the Woodward and Bernstein of the DSG than we have lately, Nick. How's it going, my friend?
It's been quite the run, Joe, and this week marks a slight pause, or the end. No, I guess next week's going to be the pause, because we have Rodney Barnes. So this is the end of the 5-week stretch that we talked. Comic book creators. We started with Kieran Gillen, right,
Yep.
and Stephanie Hans, and then we went to John Boy, and then we went to I'm missing somebody in here. We had Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and then Barnes. So it was 4 weeks then.
4 weeks, yes.
4 weeks. My apologies. Okay, yeah, I did the math wrong originally. But yeah, so we talked to Rodney. Of course, Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog dropped this week. We will talk about that specifically more later, but all around, I mean, we love talking with Rodney. And I mean, the shit that he talked about outside of Nita Hawes and Philadelphia that's going to come within that universe, Joe, I could not be more excited for that shit.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's always a blast talking to Rodney, and he's so thoughtful and so considerate, and once
so busy,
right? And so busy, but once you start getting them rolling, man, it's great because the news just keeps coming. And
yeah,
I mean, Nita Hawes dropped today. I mean, as much as we love Philadelphia, this first issue blew us both away. Like, I think I told Rodney, we don't know how it was possible to get more fucked up and ferocious than Philadelphia, but he somehow managed to scare me even more. Not that that's difficult, but Nita Hawes, man, read it.
So good.
Now, fantastic.
I mentioned this in my review on Geeks Worldwide, but Joe and I did get to look at the second and third issues of Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog, and it only gets better with each issue. We're not going to go into it farther than that. We didn't do that with Rodney either. One thing we did find out with Rodney, though, is you guys saw us tweet out a little bit a couple weeks ago when we actually did talk to him. Rodney's going to be doing a Mandalorian series for Marvel, which the first one, it seems like it's going to be kind of more about the first season, kind of like a comic, like just kind of like summarizing all that together, which I don't necessarily hate because we're going to, Mandalorian, whenever that third season comes up, I'm going to need to, a refresher in some capacity. But I do hope that they kind of let him do his own thing within the Star Wars universe with that character, with Baby Yoda, because I'd like to see if there's other stuff that's kind of happened on the side with them. I'd love to see a little bit more of that, but I'm just excited for him to get that opportunity too.
Yeah, and he's doing the IG-88 series that drops. That
was the one shot for the Bounty Hunter stuff, and that was this week too.
Was it this week or is it next week?
It was supposed to be this week, right? Either way, like he did that.
I noticed when I was doing this, a lot of shit got pushed to next week. Like when we got our
like helicopter image. Yep.
Yeah, like half our image stuff got pushed back, a week. So, but you said 5 weeks earlier, Nicholas. That wasn't a slip.
Well,
next we got a little something else cooking up.
There's a pause next week. We'll tell you that right now. But then at the week after that, there will be another Fireside Chat that Joe and I have already had the pleasure of recording. We did that the same week.
Recovered from that, by the way. I'm still. It's like fucking ectoplasm all over the place in here.
Yeah, I can't wait to have a little bit of time to reflect on that more in the coming weeks when that's actually live for everybody. We will tell you guys next week who it is, so maybe we can do a little bit there. But we don't want to take away from the Rodney Barnes conversation or the Scott Snyder Greg Capullo one, which was also awesome.
Yeah, what a week that was, man. I mean, holy smokes! This whole rollout that that he's been doing with Comixology and Scottober, and I mean the fact that he proposed this, and then we were able to follow through with it, and have Greg Capullo on, and then just all the, the tweets and the retweets from Scott and Comixology and Greg Capullo, and it was a wild week, man. I mean, all 3 books now.
Yeah,
the reviews are all up on Geeks Worldwide. We have Demons, Clear, and Night of the Ghoul are all fucking homers, and just read them. Even if you just do it for the first month, so you can read the first issues, go to Comixology Unlimited, read those books. They will be on Dark Horse. We don't know when, but they will be in print.
I think Scott said 6 months after. So,
yeah.
So if you want to wait that long, I'll tell you right now, with We Have Demons, you're definitely not going to want to do that. That was my number one. I feel like was Clear or We Have Demons your number one?
Oh, Clear was my number one for
Okay,
sure, because that
good.
just scratched every itch that I have when it just comes to reading, in general, with that sort of futuristic noir
Mhm.
Maltese Falcon type vibe to it. But and then Manipul's colors and art in that book were
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, now I like Clear. Don't get me wrong, but it was definitely number 3 for me. Night of the Ghoul, which came out this week, and we will talk about that a little bit more in a second, was my number 3. But before we jump ahead to what's new, I do want to mention there's going to be a pretty big programming note that I'm going to go over at the end of this episode. So we're on TLDR 51, so just make sure you guys listen to that at the end, because it's going to be a change in our streaming when the episodes drop and everything. But we'll get into that later on. Right now, let's talk about catching up, Joe. For me, I had No One Left to Fight 2, issue 1. I really like this first arc, and I was hoping to talk about it at some point on the show, but just the way our scheduling has been recently with solicits and all these interviews and everything like that. And last week, the live show with Scott and Greg kind of threw things off, but I really enjoy No One Left to Fight. In the art, Fico Ossio, he does the colors in that too. He's got like this cotton candy feel to his art because of the colors that he uses, but at the same time, this is like kind of manga-ish, and it's very cool, and it's all about like what happens in this world after you just saved the planet. This is the dude that saved the planet. This is his friend. This is the girl that he's married, his friend's married to, who he also happens to like. It's just like a whole bunch of drama, and I really enjoyed that series. It's a good start to the second arc. Of course, it's Aubrey Sitterson writing that. Batman the Imposter issue 1, Future State Gotham issue 6, and then Power Rangers issue 12. You got a lot of shit happening with the Power Rangers right now. Like one of my favorite ongoing series with like legacy characters. But what have you been catching up on?
Oh man, so I caught up on a ton because we didn't do what's new last week, and
Mm.
so I mean, between all of preparing for the interviews we've had, John Boy and Rodney and Snyder and Capullo, there was, and then it just
Yeah.
everything else.
And then you freaking decided in the midst of all that to cram for what you're talking about today, which I still don't understand why you
Cram
did that.
for that and get a job, Nicholas.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Very happy for you. Yes.
Doc is back, baby.
Yes, sir.
So it's been a real hectic, but a good kind of hectic, past couple of weeks. So I've tried to, get, and I'm still woefully behind. But the Joker #8, that continues to be, the best Jim Gordon book going. But I'm enjoying that. X-Men. I thought I had read X-Men #3. I hadn't, so I read that today. So I still have to read X-Men 4. Caught up on Darth Vader, Spawn, Parasomnia, Batman, Crush Lobo. I'll tell you what, Nicholas. I finally got a chance to read Dark Ages #2.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Oh,
dude. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It might be. I might be jumping the gun here, but right now, maybe my favorite Marvel thing that we have.
I think so. So because it's different, right? And,
yeah. Oh yeah.
And like I said, Taylor's on a goddamn heater. He cannot be stopped right now. We're going to be mentioning him a lot today, actually, throughout a lot of these books. But Shang-Chi #5 was really good. Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters #5. I read that. Apparently, that this whole thing is just part 1 of a 3-part Marvel event.
I mean, at least Star Wars, so it's kind of a little more contained. But what the fuck?
It's a lot, man. I mean, I love Star Wars. Give me Star Wars, but
it's a lot. Yeah,
it's going to be mainline Bounty Hunter, War of the Bounty Hunters, like books outside of Darth Vader going for, because I just can't commit, man.
They had a thing. I saw something came out with like the Siths and like Palpatine, and like it was like a book. I don't know if I don't think it's a graphic book. I think it's like just prose, where he's talking about. It's like his journal from in between The Last Jedi and was The Last Skywalker, whatever the last one was, like between like his whole like rise back into like power for a brief minute. I guess they did a thing with that. Give me more old Sith stuff. That's all I want. Like, I don't know. Like why isn't that what everybody wants?
I mean, so I don't know if you've ever read Darth Plagueis, Plagueis, however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But it's a great book. It's basically like it's Palpatine's origin story. And that's what Phantom Menace should have. That's what episode 1 should have been. Like half of that movie should have been the real origin, or at least some.
The midichlorian stuff is just in some ways it was his origin, but it's a real weird start.
But not really.
No,
because you can like that's the shit that you could dig into and explore and be absolutely fascinating and make great movies
Yeah.
or great shows or even great comics, right?
Yeah.
So that's the stuff that I want. And I mean, I'm loving the Darth Vader book, but it's contained within a very particular period of time
Yeah.
between, uh, um, um,
Yeah. I mean,
Empire and Jedi. But like, so give me like some completely original stuff. Give me Sith stuff.
yeah, and I actually did buy the Darth Revan book. I haven't read it yet because when it comes to pros, I'm a little bit behind. Plus, we have so much else. Like I'm looking at my place right now, and I mean, you are on a stack of books right now that I have yet to read that I'm going to read for the show. I have another one to the left too. Actually, I did recently buy Benjamin Percy's book, The Ninth Metal. By the
It's
way,
tremendous. I'm almost done. I've been a
yeah.
little slower finishing that, but it's absolutely fantastic.
Speaking of people we gotta talk to, we gotta touch base with him soon
Yeah,
because he's got that Wolverine stuff coming that he's announced. But
yeah.
anyways, so yeah, I'd love to see more Sith stuff. But let's not waste any further time and get to what's new this week in comics, Joe. And we will start with Comixology. Of course, we talked about Night of the Ghoul, and you reviewed it for Geeks Worldwide. I read this. I read all of these before we talked to Scott, of course, because we want to make sure we're as well read as we can be on these things. And the first issue, I'm like, this is like, I mean, the reason I asked him this question is right away as I'm reading, it's like, this is a character that feels like has been around forever. Like,
Yeah.
I understand like that's kind of what he's trying to do when he writes it, but it's not something that's so easy to do. But he has done it like with other shit. He did it with A Court of Owls too.
Yeah.
And I'm just blown away as I'm reading it. It's like, this is totally a out of left field kind of like, this isn't like a story based in a set universe like DC, right? So maybe in some ways that's easier, but also like you still have vampires and Frankenstein and all this other stuff that you like kind of have to work with. And it's like, this thing has been there the whole time. And that blew me away with this story. The whole thing's good in general, but that one aspect of it is like, this is why I want to read it more.
Yeah, and there was like I don't want to spoil anything, but there was a moment where one of the characters he talks about the ghoul and sort of describes like what he is, what his mythos means, in the creation of that character and this film. So I read it, I loved it, and the thing I loved about it, Nick, and I mentioned this in my review, is that it when you read it, it has that sort of universal monster movie feel to it, right? It really does, with Snyder's writing and Frank Avella's art. It really does sort of take you back to that golden age of horror films, and then you add the mystery of of the film and all the misery that sort of followed it. Because was it The Exorcist, where there's like this curse. People have, died, been around. There's one of those movies that has sort of like this quote unquote curse attached to it. And that's sort of the feel you kind of get,
It's Poltergeist.
Poltergeist. Thank you. That feel you get with this fictional, story within a story, so to speak. So, I mean, I love Frank Avella's art because it is dark and there is just inherently he has this horror vibe to his art. So, it was a fantastic book.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 for 3 for him to start off Scott-tober and everything. Or I guess Scott-tober's technically over. He's gonna have a sampler for all these 3, I think, next week. But either way, if you have Comixology at this point, you're reading all those because you have access to all of them now. But then we got some other stuff. It looks like, so he said it's gonna be March, and then there's another. I forget what the later date was with Jock, and there was another. I think it was the Raphael Albuquerque book. Those are going to be released like in the spring of next year or something like that, or summer, I should say. But I can't wait for those to get rolling. As for DC this week, of course, you are reading Batman. We had issue 115 out. Batcat issue 8, which you have dropped off on. No more hate rating. Suicide Squad 8. Shazam 4. Catwoman Lonely City issue 1. Batman Secret Files Peacekeeper 1 issue 1. I didn't get to read those 2, but I might go back and give those a look. We got Batman versus Big Me 2. I like the first issue of that. Refrigerator Full of Heads issue 1. Are you going to read this?
I'm definitely going to read it. I read some reviews that weren't so hot, but I'm definitely going to read because I love the first one so much. So this is naturally got to read this.
Okay. Now I also read Nubia in the Amazon's issue 1, and it was like, it's, you're trying to set a table to, a character who's been around, but like they're trying to bring her to the forefront more, who I think has a lot of potential. I liked her stuff in Future State. So, I'm willing to give this a little bit room to kind of develop, but we'll see. Wonder Girl is like this similar thing where it's kind of been a letdown. The art and everything is great, but it's just been slow moving with the plot. So I'm hoping with this, it seems like issue 2 is going to have a little bit more going. Definitely good for some younger readers, trying to get to know some new characters, but not. I'm hoping that the next issue is a little bit better. We also got Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 4, which I think this is the one. I'm behind on this. I only read the first issue, so I fell behind. Which
Jesus, Nicholas.
Yes.
What are you doing?
I other stuff, and also I figure if I'm behind on this one, I get too far behind, and if you really like it, you can talk about it on the show. So not that we're on a shortage of books to talk about, but
yeah, Nick, it's so good. So like the next issue is the big one.
Okay.
Right? We've heard about this in the news, as John Kent coming out as bisexual. I think it's tremendous.
It's on CNN, I think, right?
Yeah. Absolutely tremendous. And so this issue was big. It's been good. So the first 3 issues, there's a lot of emotional stuff, right? It's been going on, especially between John and Clark. And this issue was just a little bit more action, a little bit less, philosophical, emotional. But I think it's setting up because we're really going to get hit with it, in the next issue. So this is one that, again, Tom Taylor, right? Gotta get on this one. And before we move on to the next book here real quick, we want to talk about DC. Do you feel like Future State was a year too soon?
Do you think because the way things are kind of going right now?
Yeah, because I'm reading all the books now, like with Batman 115, Nightwing, all the fear, with
Fear
all
State.
the Fear State stuff, with the Son of Kal-El, all that stuff. Like if they had just stayed the course, like we could be right where we are now and not have had Future State. And then if they released Future State this January, it all would have made so much more sense.
Well, I think in the end it was they're doing like what they absolutely are doing what they wanted to do. I just don't think it's coming across in the manner in which DC wanted to.
They didn't execute it
because it's like I think they used, so obviously death metal and everything, right, is this whole big thing and whatnot, right? And they used Future State after it because it's like, okay, this is just Wonder Woman looking into the future, which is we'll all find out later. This is the possible future that you could see, which then by having that mixed in with death metal, then it allowed like every title to kind of change course, because that was the issue, right? Like you wanted to go and reset things, change things up and whatever. Well, now you kind of have that flexibility because we saw Future State and now everything's working in that direction. So I think that to me, what they're doing right now makes sense when you break it all down, but it is so convoluted. I mean, me breaking it down right there, I feel like I'm like missing something, but I'm not. It's just so much.
Yeah, I understand your point. You want to kind of piggyback off the events of death metal there, but the stories that they told in Future State should have been the stories they're telling now. Right. And then the books for Future State, like they were a year too soon with it. Right. They just were because now what they did was they flashed forward, they showed you and they gave you all this information. And then it's almost as if they went reset. Okay, boom. And now here's the natural order of things, like, with the magistrate and the peacekeeper and Wonder, all that stuff. I feel like if they did the Future State event, if they had done it this coming January, they could have found a way to bring back the events of death metal in a lead up to Future State. If they waited a year, they could have done that, I think, just real easily. And it would have made those books make much more sense. They would have made those books pop a little bit more. I think I would have had a much better appreciation for Superman War of the Worlds, given that, like, because you had all this lead up as to why Clark is leaving Earth. And because that book, like Superman War of the Worlds, in that moment didn't make sense because the Clark shit really wasn't happening yet.
Yeah, I think at the end of it all, it just shows like they just got too cute with it.
They overthought it, man. And they would have been a lot more successful, I think, had they pushed it off. But anyways, we digress. Let's get to Nightwing.
Yes, Nightwing is so Nightwing 85, right, this week, and obviously with Tom Taylor, I said it from the jump. This is a guy who's awesome and does a great job. But part of the reason he does a great job is because no character is ever safe. And as we're reading this particular issue of Nightwing, there is a character who we care a lot about in this story, without spoiling who it is, that we see like, what the fuck? And then we find out, okay. And then again, shortly after that, it's like, what the fuck? Because this is Tom Taylor, and he's so good at doing this because he just also writes a good story, and then you don't see it coming, and then out of nowhere it pulls out the rug from under you. And he is just, I'm going to keep saying that he's one of the best at that.
Yeah, that panel that you're talking about, I went, no
No way, not
no,
again.
no, no,
Not
no, no,
this.
no, 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 and then okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
makes
Ugh.
sense.
Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah,
Dick.
that Tom Taylor's killing it. Nightwing is killing it. You know, he did this issue was a lot better than the last one in the sense like because they're all tied into Fear State, and yeah, we kind of know how that goes. And so I think Tom Taylor's doing a pretty good job at navigating having to kind of shoehorn what has been an awesome Nightwing story into that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So and I thought this issue was a lot better at that than the last one because we got some good emotional stuff in this one. And I think that's where Tom Taylor shines.
Yeah, I think he's showing he's not a one note writer. I mean, I don't think that's what he really was before. But I mean, he's just so good at killing off characters that I feel like you think of Tom Taylor. To me, that's been the first thing. But he's showing he can create a much greater story. And with Nightwing, that's not necessarily easy because I've said it like as much as Superman is challenging, Nightwing also is not without his challenges as well for similar reasons because of the way he carries himself and views the world and his crime fighting and everything. And Tom Taylor's done a great job with this so far, and I don't expect anything, any reason for that to go in the opposite direction. What I really can't wait for with Nightwing is that one issue that's going to be no panels, right? It's just one full thing.
Yeah, is it the next issue?
It's either the next one or it's 87. I can't remember for
Yeah.
sure, but it's coming. It's coming up. It's right around the corner, and I cannot wait for that. We head over to Marvel. Okay, of course, we're both reading X-Men: Trial of Magneto issue 3 is out this week. The Death of Doctor Strange issue 2. Star Wars: The High Republic issue 10, and the final issue of the United States of Captain America issue 5. I think I'll be able to talk about that on the show. I really liked it. It was quite different. It's just a matter of like in terms of there's depth to it. But anyways, I'm going to go back and circle back on now. And it's not so much about whether or not it was good enough or not. It definitely was. But sometimes, with like Marvel or DC, like sometimes there's not a lot of depth to those stories as much as we like them.
Yeah.
Then we got also Phoenix Song Echo issue 1 out this week. As for Boom, there were 2 titles that you are reading.
Yeah. So actually 3. So Eat the Rich, number 3.
Oh.
Man, this is when I came up with the boom rule. Boom, number 1, read it. Like this is the book that fits that mold, wonderfully. Like Something Is Killing the Children, like Once and Future, right? This has just been a book that I didn't see coming, just like with those books, and it is wild, man. It is fascinating. I wish it had been a little bit further along because October would have been a perfect month. Today would have been a perfect day to talk about this book. It has been absolutely fantastic, and a lot happens in this particular issue. So I don't know how long it's planning on running. I got to check that out. But Eat the Rich has been fantastic. And then what else? Ma, number 2. I read it, and there's definitely horror elements to it, but I don't know if this book is for me. I'm going to read the next issue. It's got to like really kind of knock my socks off for me to want to continue with it. Like the second issue was good enough, but it took kind of forever to get there. And like, I was just like, I remember just being halfway through going, okay, when are we going to, and then we start to get some of the horror bits to it. And I was like, okay, we'll give it one more issue. And then lastly, Dune, House of Atreides, issue 11. This is the book I actually want to talk about today because the movie's coming out on Friday, but it's October, right? I wanted to do something.
It is, yeah. I will say this: I'm going to do a horror book after October as well. I'm going to do it in the first week of November because there's a book I really want to talk about that came up during our conversation with Keith and Davey over on Dork. But yeah. Anyways, you were saying.
Yeah, so this continues to be a great book. It's a great sort of prequel to the movie or the book Dune movie coming out this Friday. So I think it'll be great once I see the movie and once I finish the series to then talk about the book, because then I can really dive into both and how great those are. So if you're a Dune fan, this series is absolutely perfect.
Over at Dark Horse this week, we have Masters of the Universe Revelations issue 4, and then Tales from Harrow County, Fair Folk issue 4, not to be confused with Godfolk. From Aftershock, we have Beyond the Breach, which you're reading, issue 4. IDW TMNT 122, of course, your guy Usagi Yojimbo, Dragon's Bellows Conspiracy, issue 5. And then Mac's new favorite title, My Little Pony Generations, issue 1, which, wait a minute, what is that? Oh, wow. Look at that. It is My Little Pony. So I'm taking it. You picked it up for Mac, or is that for Violet?
I got one for Mac and one for Violet. So.
What a guy you are! Don't let him ever tell you you're not a good friend.
I know, right?
From AWA, Not All Robots, issue 3, which has been a great series that Joe and I have both been enjoying. Did not let you read that one alone from AWA. Fight Girls, issue 5. And then Titan Gun Honey, issue 2, which then brings us to the title that continues to have the best week after the best week after the best week. This one may take the cake, and I'm sure I'll say that in 2 weeks from now, and then 2 weeks again. Image Comics, we have King Spawn, issue 3 from our guy, Sean Lewis. Outstanding. We talked to him a while back before we started the series. If you want to, there's still stuff that you can learn from listening to that interview. So I encourage you guys to go back and listen. There's Ice Cream Man 26, Second Chances, issue 3 from our guy, Ricky Mamone, who we had on a little while back as well. But then, Joe, we got Ant 1, which I did not get a chance to read. I didn't know, this is something that's been teased for a while. We thought Hellcop was coming out this week. It's apparently not, because we didn't get the review copy for that. So confused with some of this shit. Man Among Ye, issue 7, which I've been reading. Vinyl, issue 5. Are you still on that?
I am, but that comes out next week. It got pushed.
Why did we get the review copy for that then?
We got like 20 review copies for Image this week, and half of them are for next week.
Okay, all right. So fair enough.
But I read Vinyl,
and
I don't know how I feel about this book.
It's been so
and
weird.
I don't want to say it comes out next week, so I'm not going to say.
Okay, so we'll get to that next week then. But we know for sure that came out this week. Gunslinger Spawn issue 1. Oh, yeah. I love Brett Booth. He has I don't understand how Brett Booth is not being asked to do every comic that has to do with it's like a superhero-ish type character, and they can be kind of horror. I'm not gonna go say he would be the perfect fit for Night of the Ghoul. That doesn't make sense. You're dealing with more real people and then a scary monster, right? But anything that's got superhero reaction type, guys and girls, you gotta have Brett Booth's got to be at the top of everybody's list. He's one of the absolute best out there. We love John Boy stuff. Brett Booth's another guy. I know Tyler Kirkham, he does mostly cover up, but I love his stuff too. I mean, there are plenty others that we talk about, but Brett Booth's a guy for me who's I feel like I should see more of his shit all the fucking time. He did the X-Men Legends issue 1 and 2. More, please. And look, McFarlane's as I've said before, his plotting for the story that's usually there. That always has some semblance of potential. It's good. The dialogue was actually not bad, but it's more the monologue in the narration in this. That's actually, it was only narration. There wasn't monologue, but the narration in this was kind of it's just. But that's what you get. This is what it comes down to. Yeah,
it's a Spawn book, so I mean, what you're getting there. But I did think
I don't think Greg could pull off my list when I was saying that. By the way, just total brain fart. That's what I mean. I can't think of half the people. Fucking unreal. It's only just had him on our goddamn show. Jesus.
Oh man, but so I mean, to get to Todd's writing on this, or in Spawn in general, I mean, you know what you're getting, and that's why we loved we're loving King Spawn so much. But man, Booth's art. In this book specifically, the way he draws Gunslinger Spawn and the way he so fucking good. I mean, this was just fucking high octane, badass from start to finish. And there's some panels in here, man. Whew.
Yeah. There's some shit. And then also at the end of all this too, you're also getting art from let's see, Thomas Nachlik, Philip Tan, and Kevin Keane. And there's some really good stuff. These are little backup stories, but they're not really backup stories. They're more just kind of building up the character and his mythos and everything, which I appreciate. And I said this in my review for Geeks Worldwide. Give me more of that with this character. I'd love to have some more with him. And these artists are all pretty good. So I definitely take that. And also Alice Cott I believe that's how you say the name, Ales, wrote the last backup story, which I believe is one that Kevin Keane drew. I really like that one. If you can continue that one, and I just wouldn't mind seeing Todd give someone else a little bit more room to work with this character. Stick to the Spawn main title. Sean is doing the Scorched as well, which I'm very excited for, and I love that he's going to be running that show. But maybe I know you're excited about Gunslinger, but maybe just give someone else the reins.
Yeah, and last thing about Gunslinger I loved was the fish out of water aspect to him. What is gas? And he's fucking me, boy.
And then, of course, last but not least, before we get into your book for this week, Nita Hawes Nightmare Blog issue 1. outstanding. As much as I love Gunslinger Spawn, I stand by what I said on Twitter. This is the one. If you're picking up one first issue this week, if you're picking up one book in general this week, it has to be Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog. Absolutely outstanding. Very easy read. And one little thing, but I love how Rodney right away tells you, like, this is how it's linked to Philadelphia. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, and it was perfect. It was perfect because, you know, I was wondering how it was going to tie in because Philadelphia is obviously taking place in Philly, and this is taking place in Baltimore, right? So, like, how are you going to do that? Or is there going to be a lot of, like, is it going to, you know, be long and drawn out? No, boom, he gets to it quick to the chase, and then that's really it, and that's really only where the similarities lie. And I think Rodney said he had a lot more. I think he basically said he's having a lot of fun writing this. I shouldn't say more fun, but he's having a lot of fun writing this because with Philadelphia, it's deep and it's philosophical, and there's a lot of like moving parts that he's got to sort of keep in line. Where
oh my God, so many, Joe.
With Nita Hawes, right? It's more of a paranormal detectives type story.
Yeah, we're gonna have like a buddy cop kind of thing, and then you know, shit you got to deal with over 5-6 issues, maybe.
And he can just have fucking fun with it, man. And you could tell because it's wild. And we've had the privilege of being able to read the first several issues, and boy, you guys are in for a treat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it's only going to get better too, because he has another thing that a couple things that he teases in our conversation, and one in particular that really stuck with me. That I'm like, I love Nita Hawes, and you're talking about this. Like, I think I'm more excited about this now. So it just doesn't end. The man's on a heater. I can't wait to see this. You know, all this Philadelphia stuff get adapted into. I mean, I would think shows at this point, not just a show, because Nita Hawes, I mean, showing so much potential right out the gates. All right, it is time, Joe, it's been a while since we've done one of these.
It has.
For you to talk about a book that you've been reading that I have not read.
Yeah, so this is one that I've had sort of earmarked to read for a while, and it stinks, man, because last year, you know, the format of our show was much different, but man, we only get to talk really one horror book for Dorktober, so I wanted to read this one. I'm reading Redneck by Donny Cates from Image Comics. Art by Lisandro Esheron, colorist D. Caniff, and letters by Joe Sabino. And just from the cover art, for those watching, you can see this is the part of the cover from issue 1. Man, the art is vicious.
Yes.
And it is perfect. Perfect for this book and this story.
Nice.
So this is an actual quick synopsis, Nicholas. So let's see. Redneck is a Southern fried story of the Bowmans. They're your average family of vampires deep in the heart of Texas, just struggling to survive a world that would love to see them burn. So not a lot is given away, and which is nice. So it's a nice little intriguing synopsis, but it doesn't sort of give away the heart of what this is, which is absolutely fantastic. So Redneck is still ongoing. There's 30 issues out, started in April 2017. And with issue 31 dropping next month.
When I saw that you were going to try and fit as much of this as you could in before the show, I was like, what the
I got half of it in, Bray.
Jeez, dude. Yeah. I mean, I don't question that you can read that much, but like, God, you had other things lined up.
Yeah. Well, you know, I really wanted to read this book because I love Donny Cates. I've talked about his books, you know, in the past. And so this just felt right. Like, week before Halloween, let's get some vamp, you know, shit in here. So, you know, this is what Redneck is it's just your average story of a family of vampires just trying to mind their own business, right? So usually vampires, you think, you know, they're out for blood, figuratively and literally, and you know you're getting a horror story, but this doesn't start off as a horror story. So, you know, it evolves into one, and you know the Bowmans, which is your main protagonists in the story, which is weird to say considering you're dealing with a family of vampires. But the Bowmans are a vampire family that have been around for a very long time, some longer than others. And they've decided that they actually want to live a peaceful existence. So they're on a farm in Texas, and they found a way to survive off cow's blood. And they're able to sustain their, you know, existence by running a local barbecue joint.
Okay.
With a couple of humans that they've become friendly with. And so, you know, that's sort of how the story starts. And you're getting a little bit of that sample as to sort of who some of these characters are. And it's weird to think of vampires just sort of like just chilling, you know, just chilling in Texas, having a good time, running a barbecue joint. And so there was a line in this book that Cage wrote that that comes amidst of the chaos a little bit further into the first arc, where one of the characters says, "You don't get happy endings when you live forever." So
Hmm.
these are characters that are complex, they're deep, they've seen a lot of trauma. Obviously, they're vampires, and they're just sort of like doomed to this existence of immortality, which might seem great, but for them, it isn't. And so Cates has created quite a world and mythos here. There's a lot of the normal vampire tropes, involved here, right? Sunlight, can't be out in the sunlight, got to be invited into places, things like
Hmm.
that. But he's given these characters, sort of this rich history, interesting history, origin, and right away you're sucked in. The first few panels is an intro. First few pages is an introduction, and then once the action starts to ramp up, it doesn't fucking slow down,
Nice. I
which
like the
is
sound
great.
of that.
So like the first issue is a slow build, and then you get the end of the first issue, and then boom, it's just a rocket ship, from there. And so, you got a bit of a Hatfield and McCoy's sort of storyline going here, at least in the first two arcs that I've read, and where you've got the Bowmans, and then you have the Landrys. The Landrys aren't vampires; they're just human scumbags. But there's been this, the Landrys have been in this town of Texas, for a very, very long time, generations. And so the Landrys and the Bowmans have this long, hateful history, with each other. And let me tell you, the fucking Landrys are real pieces of shit.
Yeah.
They're just they're not
Slick back
just used
hair
to,
and everything.
yeah, not just used to be a piece of shit. They are still pieces of shit.
White
And
pants and everything.
oh, it's fucking brutal. And so
People can change though.
yeah, which is not this fucking guy. Let me tell you.
Okay.
But
Let's run the
so
test.
it's this flipping of roles where the vampires are sort of your protagonist and the humans are your antagonists. And this is where Cates really shines. I think we love writers like Taylor and Zdarsky, for example, because they understand their characters so well. They're the good guys so well. They make them flawed, but they know how to write them. Cates does the opposite with the villains. We saw it with Venom. Venom's one of those cool characters, right? Because he's sort of that shade of gray.
Yeah.
He knows how to write him to be very vicious, but he can also write him, on the other side really well. But like I always thought it was his work with Null and Cletus Cassidy,
Mm-hmm.
where Cage really shined, like because those are villains
Mm-hmm.
that you just loathe and detest, and they always have they're always one step ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of what we get here, with Redneck, where this character Landry, he's this particular iteration of Landry, he's a town preacher, similar to the character from Crossover, that preacher character in Crossover, right? That hateful
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
father figure. And so he's drawn to look evil, his actions, he's just full of malice. And the book starts off really with you've got this family of vampires. They're all various ages. These are my boys, and they look like they're in their 30s and 40s, but that's just sort of the age they were when they were converted. But they want to go into town. They want to have, they're sick of being in the house. They just want to go into town, have themselves a good time. And so those are those characters are the son of JV, who's sort of the family patriarch. And he's like, I don't want you boys going to town causing trouble, kind of thing. Don't worry, we won't. And so your main
Mm-hmm.
character in the book, Bartlett, he's an older member of the family, and he's like, JV, I'll go in. I need to get out of here as well. I'll go take a look at, I'll look after them, make sure they don't get into trouble. So he goes into town, finds out they got into trouble. They got into trouble with the Landrys, and then the way the first issue ends is that one of those boys, the Bowman boys, is found in daylight hanging from a noose from the tree, and all their cow stock or their livestock, I should say, is dead on the in front of their farm. And you've got Bartlett, who is your main character. He's passed out, and JV, thinks that he did it. And the shit, the way that Cates writes his stories, you think like, okay, this guy Bartlett, he's definitely got a past. He's a bit of a coward. What the fuck did he do? Did he, just go nuts and start killing everyone, and how the story unfolds and how the Landrys get involved. And there's another character named Grandpa who lives up in the attic, and you want to see a creepy fucking looking character. This guy, like legit frightening to look at on page.
Okay,
and the role that he plays, not just within his whole family, but also like in this whole thing that gets orchestrated between the Landrys. It's like, that's just the first arc, man. And it, like, from the end of the first issue to the end of issues, or to issue 6, is fucking wild. And then where you go from, the second arc 6 through 12, gets even. It's such a well-written story. The twists and turns, like there aren't like a lot of zigzags through this, Nick, but like there's a point where things pivot, and all of us, you're sucked in. Like you said, I can't believe you like undertook, Nick. I read these first 2 arcs like that.
So there hasn't been at all like a lull, because I know you're not all the way through the 30 issues that we've gotten to this point, but there's not at all like a lull.
No, no lulls, because it's so, you get a little, backdrop on each character. And I haven't even like really mentioned them all. Like Bartlett, he's sort of the main character, the narrator. He's got a great backstory, and he's a well-written coward. And you learn about his past and why he acts that way, and the role that he plays, is tremendous. JV, like I said, he's sort of like the family patriarch. He's a badass. He's a strong vampire. You don't want to cross him. And then his 3 sons, Slap, Greg, and Seamus, they're bit characters. Slap is the one that gets killed off right away, and that sort of is the first domino that falls into this chaos that takes us, these peaceful vampires, and really just puts things up on end. And then you've got Grandpa, who, like I said, he's an old, horrifying, miserable fuck, and he's just like, he's too crippled and decrepit, and he's still very powerful. And then you have this little character, her name is Perry. She's a little girl, but she is also very strong. So learning more about her, she becomes a lot more of a player in the second arc. And so there's just this great dynamic. And then you throw this Landry, and his family into the mix and everything. It's just, if you're into vampires, if you're into, vicious art, if you're, and you're into just great character stories. I mean, this is just, how I haven't read this book sooner is baffling. And I wish I had read it sooner, because it probably would have made my list that we did with Dork.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And we saw what the influence that we had on Keith a little bit too, because the Tunnel was very high on the list. Hotel was. And I'm sure that Gideon Falls would have been on there too. I just have not gotten to that one yet. But I do want to ask, with this, do you get the impression that this is something that has like an end in sight, or it's just going to keep going, and like this is something like Donny Cates could write for 100 issues if he wanted?
I mean, he probably could. I haven't gotten that far. Like I said, I'm only halfway through, or just about halfway through. Right?
But when you get that feel of something, like Once and Future is a really good example of that, where it's like,
I mean, I feel like there should be a finite end to this. And like I said, we're getting issue 31 next month, so I don't know if that's going to be a final arc, or if that's going to be taking a break, getting back on the horse, because you want to talk about a busy man. Cates has also been a very busy man.
Yep.
So
we definitely don't talk about enough on here.
Right. So I mean, I definitely think there should be like a finite, whether that's 60, whether that's 90. I don't know yet, because I haven't gotten far enough to know. Like, you get that feeling. Okay, we're 30 issues in. Okay, I can see this is going to wrap up sooner yet, right? I don't have that exact feeling yet, but I can tell you this would make, I know you're going to ask it, a tremendous show.
I didn't even feel like I needed to ask it. I was going to say this, like it sounds like a show.
Oh, 100%. You could do this like True Blood, right? The world isn't, at least where I'm at in the story, isn't as vast as what True Blood seemed to have been, but
that could
doesn't mean that's not the case.
Yeah.
100%.
Doesn't mean it's not the case, but it could also be a good thing, because like True Blood was a lot, and it's like, as much as I like True Blood, like you don't need True Blood again.
Yeah. And exactly. And you've got 2 human characters, which are, and those characters,
better than Sookie Stackhouse. She was so
well, I'll tell you what, Sookie, real nice. But
okay. All right. Well,
you're not a Sookie guy?
Not particularly, no. No,
okay. Okay. Hot take.
Didn't think it was.
But anyway, so real quick, the 2 human characters are Phil and Evil. and Evil is he's a mute. He doesn't talk. He communicates by sign language. And when you get his backstory, and when you see this guy in action, Nick,
Yeah.
I mean, we thought issue 1 of Berserker was fucking nuts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this guy is fucking nuts, man.
I'll tell you what. It seems
But he's got like a soul to him. You know what I mean? Like there's a good, but like when this character switch flips, forget about it.
But you bring up Berserker, and it seems like people like I saw that on like a list recently. Like somebody like did I don't think it was like a comic book reviewer like us, but a reviewer of like literacy and everything like that. Like literary review, however you want to fucking call it. But like they like for the best graphic novels of the past year, or whatever. I think they put the first arc of Berserker on there, and it's like not a long list.
I would call them fucking Keanu stands.
I mean,
right?
dude,
Because I mean, and here's the thing: I love Matt Kent. He's a great writer. The problem is like the story just hasn't evolved fast enough. It's the pacing. It's 100% the pacing.
Yeah, no, it's just so like you like throwing stuff in the past is cool, and mixing it in throughout the entirety of the story is something you can do, but they've just condensed it so much over like 3 things, and it's like it's not making sense. But anyways, we're talking about Redneck, so well, I don't know. Did you have more about Redneck that you wanted to share?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, if you're a fan of horror books, if you're a fan of vampires, and you're a fan of just really good art, I mean, this book it's perfect. Like I said, this probably would have made my list. It's absolutely fantastic. This is a must read, period.
So we're gonna have to propose to Rich that what we do next year is we go back and maybe retcon it, because we'll have had a whole year to read some stuff. You have the book that I'm talking about this week. I'm going to talk about another one that came up in our conversation.
Read American Vampire. Read all those.
You're the only one that hasn't read it.
Oh, right, but that's what I'm talking about, right? 30 Days of Night. Like read those books. And then go back and remake the list.
The book that I'm talking about I guess it'll be not the first week of November, it'll be the second, because we have that interview, and we'll explain what's going to happen when November starts in a bit. But that book that I have planned that I mentioned in our interview, or it's like afterwards, or not interview, our conversation with Rich and Davey, you saw the art from that Garth Ennis story, and that's some fucked up shit, right?
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to read it. I got to be honest.
I mean, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to kick myself for doing it, but
it's some vile shit. I'll tell you what, that's vile and it's scary, but I would say this is a little bit scarier, and we've been waiting for this day for a while, Joe. This was the first book that I wanted to talk about when we're looking at Doctober. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to have an interview. We're going to have with Scott and Greg. What did we do the week before that? Because I feel like we had something else, and we couldn't do the omnibus. The omnibus. We had the omnibus. We had Greg and Scott, and then the last week we have the solicit. So we only have 1 week to do horror books. That's what I'm going to do on November. But this week, Joe, what I'm talking about is the book we've all been waiting to hear about, Bunny Mask. And really, when I say we, it's you, because you're the only one that's not allowed to read it on the planet. Everybody else can go and have their fun. 4 issues. This started a little bit earlier in this year. This is, of course, from Aftershock, written by Paul Tobin. The artist is Andrea Muti, and then the letters are done by Taylor Esposito. Only 4 issues to the first arc. We're going to get the second arc next year. I don't know how long this is going to go for. This feels like it has some legs where it could go on for a bit, or Tobin could take this in a different direction and wrap it up in like 3 arcs. You know what I mean? Like there are a few different ways I see this going, especially as I was thinking about it more before I talked to you about this today. Now, a one way to tell if something's like gonna be really good now in this day and age, like in the 90s, right? You had a ton of variant covers, and like it just became a little bit too much for people, right? But there are some titles that you still will get that with, and usually those are the really kick-ass ones that you have characters that you can have a lot of fun with. Indie comics, you'll get it with Marvel and DC, but not like crazy amount. You may have 1 variant, but like Spawn, right? We get a fuck ton of Spawn variants. I was looking through this as I'm like just getting ready for the show. Like I looked at see if there were variants for this on League of Comic Geeks. I mean, even up until the 4th one, there's like 5 variants for that one. There's a shit ton of variant covers for this. But I'm still taking the Andrea Muti covers for this every single time because his art was outstanding. But that little thing shows you just how good how much our Aftershock believed in this title, and rightfully so. I don't know what they do with their other stuff quite as much, but I don't feel like you have like these smaller indie companies a fuck ton of variant covers, and you get that with this one. Now, time for a little synopsis, and let's talk about the actual book itself. Sealed in a cave before the dawn of man, released by a crazed madman, Bunny Mask walks our world once more. But for what dark purpose does she use her unnatural powers? And what's her connection to Bea Foster, a young girl murdered by her father 14 years ago? In order to save his life and his sanity, one man will have to discover the truth of what waits behind the mask. Writer Paul Tobin and artist Andrea Moody unleash an eons-old legend upon an unsuspecting world, one that'll make your most horrific nightmare feel like a walk in the park. Which, you got something to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, which if looking at that synopsis, now that's for the first issue, right? That's leading up to the series and everything. If you look at the second issue, quite literally, Bunny Mask is walking through a jungle gym, in a park, essentially. So it's I'll tell you what, dude, the covers on these things are terrifying enough. And I read all of this during the day. I think I tried reading one at night. And then like, just when you see the character pop up a couple times, it's just like, oh, fuck. I legitimately get shivers. And I'll tell you what, you're of course reading Redneck leading up to this. I was reading Bunny Mask as it was going on. But when it's something you've read while it's going on, and like you get to the sixth issue or the fourth in this case, you want to go back and just refresh yourself on stuff, right? A lot of it was top of mind. I just need to see a couple pictures and I'm good. But Joe, I keep like all my comics are at my place. Like I don't have stuff like stored at my parents' house or anything like that. Not comics at least. But I have issue 2. I have the final issue of the first arc, issue 4, but I couldn't find the first one. And there's only so many that there can be. Like the only places that it can be. So it's like almost like it didn't want to be found, which is kind of, that may be a little creepy in its own way too. I was a little uncomfortable. Like seriously, I spent like a half hour looking for it. I had no fucking clue.
Is it under your mattress, the sweet paprika?
Yeah, it's right there. But seriously, I was like, what the fuck? Like that's the only one like I really might want to go back and look at. But then I thought about it enough, and I remember what had happened. And I don't need to see that shit again. It's fucking terrifying. And just like a couple notes on the first issue, like there's an investigation into Bea Foster's father, who this guy's like lost his mind. And then the main character in this is Tyler Severin, who takes part in this investigation. He's actually a doctor, but I believe he's working like a social worker at the time. So he's doing all this different shit. And then in the end, like he ends up falling in this cave, which is related to all of Bea Foster's father's craziness. And then that's where Bunny Mask comes up in all this. And what's so weird is like it's this character who has like a Batman like mask, like not a cowl, but just like covering up her eyes, her nose and eyes, and up above that you can see her mouth, and she's kind of got like this dazed look almost with her mouth, where it's like kind of like how when like your parents say like when you're catching flies, you ever had that as a kid? Yeah, that kind of like just mouth open the whole time.
Thank you.
It's terrifying. And then like there are times where you can hear a character talk, like when you're reading, like you can hear it like a different voice, right? And it doesn't happen often, but I definitely get that with this character. I get these vibes, and it's just like so fucking spooky. And every time, like in the first issue, we see a bit of her, and then she's gone. Then you see her again pop up in number 2. You see her pop up again in number 3. And it's just like these random spots. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, when did you get here? Like, how the fuck did this happen? And it's just, every fucking turn with her. It's so good. 4, a lot of shit happens in 4. And I'll get to that a little bit in a second. Let me talk about some of the characters, though, first. So I mentioned Tyler Severin. He's a doctor. He has the accidental run-in with Bunny Mask as he's doing this help with his investigation. And he met Bunny Mask like 14 years, like, in the past. We're in the present. The first issue is in 14 years in the past, and then you bring it back to where we are in present day. We'll just call it now. But then that's when Bunny Mask starts to pop back up again. And how Tobin kind of described herself in interviews leading up to the series, an eerie, supernatural woman with uncanny powers. Okay, just to give you an idea, she's pretty strong and everything, but you don't quite know what her deal is. Then we have Bea Foster, and I'll say, as weird as things are with Bunny Mask, there are maybe more questions surrounding this character Like that, and that I feel like that's saying a lot because Bunny Mask is fucking terrifying. But you know how in the synopsis I said that B is dead? She died 14 years ago. Well, that may not entirely be the case as you read the story going further. But then again, you're like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm gonna kind of leave it there like that because like, you guys won't figure out as the first arc goes along, but you're gonna have the same fucking questions I had. Guarantee that. Yeah. You all right?
Yeah. I did the Instagram right for today and going through all those fucking covers and then hearing you describe it, and I just have like those covers in my head.
Good.
This book is gonna be fucked up,
Good.
man.
Yeah. For those who don't follow us on Instagram, go check it out. As you're listening to this, go check out the art that Joe shared because it's fucked, man.
And that's just from the first like 2 issues because you talked about the variant covers.
Yeah.
I think I just used most of the variant covers from issues 1 and 2.
Because there's so much.
They're fucking terrifying.
Yeah, and even just Moody's on Muties on his own. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I apologize, but his art is so good too, and he does the colors on this too. And you got like that watercolor effect in this, like it's but like where we talk about with Dye, where you have that watercolor effect. It's very different here. As much as Dye is also a dark fantasy. I wouldn't file that under horror by any means. Neither would you. But it definitely got that like fucked up vibe. Like that's. I feel like with watercolors, that is something like that accents like what the fuck is going on kind of vibes. Like it does a really good job with that, and it's very unsettling like the entire time because like she gives you chills. Like she's a fucking terrifying character, and then like she does like some really weird fucking shit. And you're like, wait a minute, what? And it happens like the first issue, and you see it pop up again maybe in the third, and it's just like, what the fuck is up with this character? What is her deal? Like, I don't know after the first arc what her deal is. Like, I kind of do, but I don't think that like you're supposed to, because I don't think Tyler Severin fully knows what her deal is either. Yeah. In the first 3 issues, it feels like it's going to be this like condensed thing, this condensed story that's not gonna, it's like I think Tyler's living in New York and like where he met Bunny Mask kind of in the country a little bit more, so like maybe upstate New York or whatever. But then the scope by the 4th issue like grows immensely, and then it's I don't know if Tobin's trying to like take this as like a larger scale thing, but I could also still see it as like you're going to get a lot more people involved in this, but it's still kind of condensed to the area that Tyler lives. Because I have a vision for like what this ending could be. I'm not trying to project my ending onto Tobin and I want him to do his own thing, but I could see different ways where this could go and see this like having like a finite ending, like I don't know, maybe 3-4 arcs after this one. It could go on for a while though too. So he's got it. He can go in a couple of different directions with this, and I hope I haven't I didn't oversell it because like this is I hope you like this is one of my favorite things that I've been reading since it started.
This and Shadecraft, right? I have to read.
Shadecraft was so good. Like but I mean, I feel like I painted an accurate picture for you in this. And they're both awesome for different reasons. But
yeah, I mean, the cover art alone sells it and sets me up for some.
Thank you for waiting on this one.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Now, movie, I would imagine for this.
Yeah, I think. I would think it would end up being. Yeah, it makes sense for this to be a movie. I mean, I need to see more though to make a definitive decision, but it feels like it's a movie vibe for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the watercolors. I think watercolors lends itself really well to horror comics because with watercolors it blurs the lines and it gives that sort of specter-like feeling to the art. And so when you're reading that with the spooky, the creepy, the macabre, dialogue, I think it just enhances it, because I think Cullen Bunn, I can't remember the artist with Harrow County, that's in watercolors. That gets some really, crazy vibes in it as well.
So there's also another character who's like in this story that I'm not going to mention names. You're going to hear from that character early on in the story, and then you find out who the character is later on in this arc. But like this is like when I was thinking about like she pops up randomly at one point later on after like outside of the first issue and the 4th issue, like in the second one, this is what I'm talking about, where you're in his room and then out of nowhere, boom. There she is.
Fuck that.
It is just like,
I can't sleep with that shit.
I'm looking at it right now and I'm getting freaking goosebumps from it, man. It's so good. It's so good.
I can't. Yeah, that's what half the reason I stopped watching The Walking Dead for 2 reasons. One, because after season 3, I couldn't take it anymore.
3.
But 2, I couldn't watch the shit at night because it'd keep me up all fucking night. I'd have to like watch it like the next day.
Yeah.
During a lunch break or something like that, because I'd watch it before bed, and then fuck it, I'm up all goddamn night.
You poor thing. You poor thing.
That's
Well,
what this book's gonna do to me.
I really think it will. I don't think Cross will when I talk about it. That's the book I'm going to talk about next time around, but we still got a little bit between now and that. Because actually, now is probably a good time, Joe, for us to lay out the plans moving forward. Bunny Mask, I hope you guys like it. I have no doubt if you like horror books, you're gonna like Bunny Mask. Like I know I didn't like oversell this thing. Like I'm just being modest. Like fucking, it's kick ass.
Same with Redneck.
It sounds really good.
Yeah,
it sounds amazing. All right, so of course this week you guys are doing. I've heard it both ways, or is it next week?
No, we're on this week, Thursday night.
Okay, Thursday night, and you're doing episode 9 of season 3?
Yep, season 3, episode 9. It's Christmas in October, baby.
Nice. Okay, so here is our new schedule, and this is starting next week, Joe. Right?
Yes.
Not in November. Okay. So starting next week, on our normal week, so the weeks that we don't have interviews, we're going to live stream the show on Tuesdays, same time, 1:30. And it'll be the same show format and everything. That is not going to change. The audio will then drop Wednesday at midnight. So that way you guys can go and listen on your drive to the comic shop. So like, obviously that's been ideal. That would have been ideal from day one, but with my work changing, since when we first started the show in the pandemic, and now Joe's work changing, of course, back to work, baby. I'm so happy for you. I've said congratulations, but I want to say publicly, like, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
And we've been seeing this change coming at some point, but we wanted to wait till it actually happened, and we knew what we could do differently. So this is what we'll do differently. However, on weeks that we have interviews, and we're going to give you as much notice as we can, we are going to record only what's new. And we will still do that on a Tuesday, but the time may vary depending, because sometimes we do interviews on Tuesdays, usually the best days for Joe and I to do that kind of stuff. So we will let you know as far in advance when we're going to have an interview, like November 3rd, we're going to have an interview that week. So because we already have that one in the can, we'll be able to probably do what's new on that Tuesday at 1:30. We'll let you guys know next week for sure with the scheduling, because we don't want to confuse you too much. We're already giving you a lot right now. But when we do that, the interview will continue to be dropped on Wednesdays. When we just do what's new on the weeks that we have interviews, that audio is going to come out on Friday like the old stuff. But on a normal week, you're only going to get audio on a Wednesday. So every Wednesday, you'll be getting shit from us from now on. No questions asked, in audio form. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at TLDR_pod, because we will always be tweeting out updates on the schedule. If we have an interview, if it got pushed and we got to make an adjustment last minute. So that way you guys are as up to date as you can be. I mean, you should follow us there anyways, but now you have like a real reason to follow us there.
Yeah, it's going to be a change, and we'll get used to it, but it's exciting all around. And, I'm still thankful that given with the new job, we could still
Me too.
do the show when we in the ballpark of when we normally do it. We didn't have to make any real drastic changes. So a win-win all around, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the most important thing is that it fit with your schedule, because you got work now. So I couldn't be happier for you. And I think honestly, in the end, this is better for everybody. In like, not just like, aside from the work part for you, like I think it's better for everybody, because it makes more sense to have stuff drop on New Comic Book Day. Yeah. That's why we put the interviews out on those days. Yeah. But anyways, so if you guys have questions, feel free to DM us on Twitter, whether it's Joe and I directly or the show account. You can also get us on Instagram too, at TLDR_pod. We are not going to do scheduling updates over there. It's only going to be on Twitter. So keep posted. But if you subscribe to the show, then you're not going to have to worry. All the shit's going to come right to your phone, whether you're using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or I don't know if SoundCloud necessarily does that, because I don't have SoundCloud. But anywhere you listen to us, if you're subscribed, the shit's going to go right to your phone anyways. So you're just going to you'll just be surprised when it comes out. So just make sure you do that. Okay, it'll be nice and easy. So so next week we will be broadcasting on Tuesday. It'll be a normal week for us. We'll talk about what's going to happen on the 3rd next week. But until then, Joe, stay sexy.
You know it.